In 2014, the then Petroleum Minister, Mrs. Diezani Madueke, made it clear that the nation was embracing privatization of the refineries as the best option for Nigeria. But some months down the line, a new administration, through the Group General Manager of the NNPC, Dr. Ibe Kachiku, says there is no plan by the federal government to privatize the refineries. According to him, the refineries will be run on a joint venture basis between the investors and the federal government. What this implies is that a revenue-sharing formula would be adopted in splitting whatever accrues as profits to the NNPC, which will now be run as a company. How will this new arrangement affect the revenue base of Nigeria, which before now depended solely on crude oil revenue? Now, to look at this major policy shift from privatization to a joint venture company, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by an energy expert, Dr. Diran Fawibe. Dr. Fawibe, thank you very much for joining me on the news at 10.
Thank you.
Now, after some 2 years of intense speculation about the privatization of Nigeria's refineries, are you surprised that the GMD of NNPC has announced that the federal government does not plan to sell?
Well, I guess the sale of the proposed sale of the NNPC refinery was as a result of frustration because of the embarrassment and lack of performance of the refineries over the years. As you are aware, when we have a refinery with a throughput capacity of about 445,000 barrels per day, and we were not able to get even about 100,000 barrels per day, it was a serious problem. Now, many people have said the refinery should be sold, while some other people argue against that because it will amount to selling the family silver. But if we want to go about it, it's either you sell or you put it on a joint venture basis. That is exactly what the new GMD is now advocating. And when this announcement was made, and many of us have actually advocated, either we sell or run it on a joint venture basis, like the first Port Harcourt refinery that was established in 1965. If we go through the memory lane, the refinery was built by the joint venture between Nigerian government, only 60%, and Shell BP, only 40%, but BP managing the refinery. The arrangement was such that it enabled the refinery to be able to maintain the asset, was able to pay its staff, build up a workforce that was loyal and dedicated, able to maintain the refinery, and above all, was able to pay dividends to the shareholders. But over the years, things have gone awry.
Well, as it is now, with this joint venture being established now, does it actually mean that we don't have the funds? Is that why we're going into the joint venture? Is it because we don't have the funds, or is it because we don't have the capacity?
Now, no, we should look at it this way. Usually, anything in the hands of government is never sustained. And even the arrangement being proposed by the GMD of NNPC, where we could say that with his background, it could work. But is it sustainable? That is, after he must have left office, maybe in another 10 years, so to say, or if the president leaves office in another 8 years, that's if he does the second term, will the arrangement be sustainable? If we are able to build up the culture that will enable us maintain the refinery like it's been done in other countries, yes, there's no reason why we should actually sell. But the way it can be done is that management should be in the hands of possibly the private sector.
All right, but then who's going to finance the joint venture, and how's the profit going to be shared?
Well, the way I'm looking at it, and I haven't got the details of what the GMD is about to say, is that the private sector should have equity in the business. When you have equity, and not only in the hands of government, then you are assured that both parties will be able to put together the fund. Don't forget, refinery business is a very, very serious business. And over the years, government has not demonstrated the discipline to be able to run the business. When you don't have enough money as operating costs, talk less of a capital budget, then you cannot maintain a refinery that you have to maintain constantly. You have to do predictive maintenance, you have to do routine maintenance, and you have to do turnaround maintenance. From this series of maintenance, many things will need to be changed, many spare parts will need to be fixed if you don't want to have downtime. But government, with the NNPC or refinery management going cap in hand, begging for money, either from the allocation from National Assembly, I don't think that kind of arrangement will be able to make this kind of activity or the momentum that we are now going to get from the GMD to be sustainable. That is the fear. But if you have a joint venture whereby government will put its own money, the joint venture partner will put its own money, then you have an arrangement that will be able to make the business, the refinery, to be run like a business, not like a public corporation that you may not be able to have enough money.
Well, finally, we don't want to be beholden to foreign investors forever. So will this joint venture ensure that skills are transferred to Nigerians so that there are training opportunities as well?
Well, of course, when we mean private sector, not necessarily a foreign partner. You may have a hybrid, a combination of foreign partner. For example, if government wants to divest, say, about 40% or 49%, you could have it some Nigerians or a Nigerian company having some equity, but you bring in some foreign technical partner that has capability in running a refinery, because so far in this country we haven't really got people, except you bring it individuals who have got experience over the years to be able to do so. Okay. If you have this kind of arrangement and not and people who are committed to Nigerian content policy, because that has outlined what you should do in terms of training Nigerians, in terms of transferring technology, and over time, even the turnaround maintenance being done and that is being done now, you are using Nigerian engineers. And it's a big shame that if we have been in the refinery business since 1965 and we haven't built a core of people, engineers or whatever you may call it, that can maintain refinery, it's a big shame. And it's about time for us to reverse that trend. And there are quite many people in this country, many engineers in this country that can maintain refinery and sustain the business.
All right, thank you very much for joining us on the news at 10, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with Dr. Diran Fanwibe, an energy expert. The African Development Bank has been asked to follow through its reform programs with speed and efficiency to fast-track economic growth on the continent. The Vice President, Yemi Oshibajo, said this becomes important as the continent faces the challenge of a rising population and foreign direct investment on the continent is not encouraging. The Vice President said this at the investiture of Dr. Akinwumi Adesina as the 8th President of the African Development Bank in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Our correspondent, Gloria Umezioke, reports.
8th President of the Africa Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, walks into the large gathering of high-level participants from 54 member countries who came to witness his investiture alongside Nigeria's Vice President and some state governors, President Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire, among a host of stakeholders from both the private and public sectors. The new president came up after his citation to take the oath of office.
I, Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, solemnly declare.
The new AFDB president, formerly Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture, had made bold his stance on driving inclusive growth among African nations. The vice president of Nigeria urged the bank to redouble its efforts towards poverty reduction, encourage good governance, and increase efficiency of its programs.
We must ask ourselves some tough questions. Do African economies require a different paradigm? How can trickle-down paradigms work when half our populations are extremely poor? Do we not need some attention to social investment, conditional cash transfers to the poorest segments, universal primary health care schemes, school feeding programs? These can energize local economies and create important multipliers in the economy.
Two-thirds of Africans have no access to electricity. The lack of reliable power grids is a major obstacle to industrializing the continent's economies at a time when Africa hopes to make a transition from commodities producer to a manufacturing hub. This will be the crucial focus of the bank.
The more energies economies have, the more prosperous are their peoples. We must do more to power Africa. From our homes, businesses, industries, to our schools and hospitals. To do so, we must take bold steps, think differently, and act with a greater sense of urgency.
Other stakeholders left with high expectation.
Priorities that Dr. Adesina talked about very much align with the things we need to do in the country, and I believe we should have a strong partnership. We ourselves need to work hard fighting that corruption because it will unleash more revenues for our own development.
We already have the right policies, we have the right people in place, the environment is cool, the comparative advantage is there in the country, so we are very confident about taking this opportunity.
Expanding opportunities, unlocking potentials to create huge capacities to boost economic reforms have been the critical words here. Nigeria can tap into these lofty drives if it prioritizes energy and reduction of poverty. From Abidjan, Gloria Umezuke.
The Court of Appeal sitting in Owerri, Imo State, today struck out the case against the Imo State governor challenging his victory at the April 11 governorship elections. Delivering judgment, the chairman of the tribunal, Justice Jimmy Bada, says that the appeal was dismissed due to what he calls improper service of summons on the respondent by the petitioners. The judge further explains that the issue of service is fundamental in law and the ruling of the appeal is very clear. However, the petitioner, Honorable Emeka Ihedioha, has vowed to challenge the appeal court ruling at the Supreme Court. And more witnesses of the People's Democratic Party in the disputed Akwa Ibom governorship election have testified that the election in the state was free, fair, and complied with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2010. Led in evidence by Mr. Paul Usoro, counsel to Governor Emmanuel Udom, the fifth witnesses who took their turn to testify insisted on the sanctity of the election conducted on April 11, 2015. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, reports.